So for our second part of today's class, we have the uses of complex and simple sentences. So let's just take a moment to refresh our memory from the first part. Here we have the complex and simple sentences, how they're structured between independent clauses and dependent clauses. So remember that the independent clause is the one that it gives us an idea, and the dependent clause, it can be left on its own. So because it's raining, we're staying inside. The simple sentence would be we're staying inside. That is known as the dependent clause. The independent clause is because it's raining. We put these two together and we have what is known as a complex sentence. All right. Now, complex sentence types. The complex sentence and simple sentence. The components for each one is one independent clause and at least one dependent clause. The purpose or reason for this is to add more information to the main idea. And it also provides more flow to sentences and paragraphs. That's the idea, that's the objective of complex sentences. Simple sentences, on the other hand, they only require one independent clause, and their purpose or reason is to share a complete thought. However, including multiple simple sentences in a row can make your speech or writing feel choppy, which means that it's becomes confusing, in other words, my dear students. This now brings us to conditional sentences. So how do we use conditional sentences here in the complex sentences? How's it possible? Well, as a note, conditional sentences that often express an if-then type of relationships utilize the complex sentence structure. To transform the example of the above graphic into a conditional sentence, it would read, if it starts raining, we're staying inside, which, as you can see, gives a slight different meaning to it. Writers and speakers who effectively vary their sentence structures weave both complex and simple sentences through their speeches and writings to create an engaging rhythm to keep readers and listeners interested. So that's something super important to know. Now, this leads us to the uses of complex sentences. Just over here. As you can see, understanding the use of complex sentences will help you write better sentences. For example, in formal writing, such as academic papers or professional reports, you can use complex sentences to explain complicated relationships between ideas, present evidence, and build a logical argument too, which is super important at this level, B2C1. How does it work? More or less like this. You have the use of complex sentences, which it's a showing relationship between ideas, cause effect, or time contrast. For example, because the power went out unexpectedly, that's the adverb we use there, the entire neighborhood was plunged into darkness. Why does it work? In this case, the dependent clause provides the reason for the event described in the independent clause, showing a cause and effect relationship. Unexpectedly, that's kind of what we're looking for. Another way of usage of the complex sentence is adding detail and context. Here's our example. The new research paper, which explores the impact of social media on adolescent mental health, has generated significant discussion among psychologists. What's going on here? The dependent clause explains the new research paper by adding detail about its focus and relevance, creating sentence variety and flow. Here's the example that is presented. She finally understood that the intricate problem after she spent hours carefully reviewing the calculations. What does this mean? What's going on? By the end of the sentence with the dependent clause, the main statement is resolved and explained. The structure helps vary the pacing. Emphasizing ideas. Here's our example. Although the evidence was circumstantial, the jury ultimately reached a guilty verdict. So, what's going on over here, my dear students? The main point of this sentence is the jury's verdict, which is the independent clause. The dependent clause emphasizes the idea while still highlighting the final decision. Here's another usage that we have of the complex sentences. Expressing conditionals or hypothetical situations. The project will be approved only if the budget is significantly reduced. So what happens here? The dependent clause specifies the condition under which the action in the dependent clause can occur. And only if emphasizes the exclusivity of this requirement. So only if, that is the only way this is going to happen. Only if the budget is significantly reduced. Now, strategies to use complex sentences effectively. Thoughtfully created complex sentences are more effective for weaving information together and adding detail, depth, context, and emphasis. Here are ways you can use complex sentences effectively. Vary sentence openings. To add variety to your speech writing, try starting some sentences with a dependent clause instead of consistently beginning with the subject and verb of an independent clause. This approach introduces the context or condition of your sentence first, which can gradually engage readers or listeners with the main idea. Second, choose the right subordinating conjunctions. The subordinating conjunctions you choose directly signals the relationship between the clauses. Select a conjunction that clearly and accurately connects your ideas to strengthen your argument. For example, using because indicates a cause-effect relationship. Because the data was inconclusive, comma, we needed to conduct for further research. Avoid overusing complex sentences. So it's important at a B2C1 level to use them, but we don't want to exaggerate that. While complex sentences help add detail and sophistication to speeches and writing, relying too much on them can make your speech or you're writing dense and difficult to follow. Aim for a balance of complex and simple sentences to prioritize clarity and flow. Ensure sentence clarity. Complex sentences aim to increase understanding, my dear students, not complicate it. Make the relationship between the independent and the dependent clauses clear and easily digestible, and avoid using obscure phrases or clauses that may confuse listeners and readers. I hope you enjoyed this second part of the of what is a complex sentence, its definitions, uses, and of course, strategies. I'll see you all in our third part. Have a good one.